That honey in your cabinet with the bear-shaped bottle? It's not honey, the raw organic honey you paid $15 for at Whole Foods. Lab tests say it contains no pollen, which legally means it's not honey at all. The 100% pure honey you've been adding to your tea, Pure is doing some very heavy lifting in that claim. I spent a month investigating America's honey supply chain, talking to beekeepers, reviewing import records, examining lab reports from food safety organizations. What I discovered will make you question every jar you've ever bought. In the next 22 minutes, I'm exposing exactly which honey brands are selling you something that isn't actually honey, what those pure and natural labels are hiding, and the truth about where your honey really comes from. By the end, you'll know the simple test that separates real honey from corn syrup with flavoring, you'll understand why most supermarket honey fails basic authenticity standards, and you'll know exactly which brands are worth trusting. Let's start with the most famous honey brand in America, the one that's been lying to you since childhood. Sue Bee honey has been in American kitchens for over a century. The friendly bee mascot, the wholesome Midwestern branding, the promise of pure natural honey from American beekeepers. The reality? This honey has been ultrafiltered to remove all pollen, which according to the FDA means it's not legally honey. Here's what Sue Bee does. They source honey from wherever it's cheapest, which often means China, Vietnam, or India. They superheat and ultrafilter the honey to remove every trace of pollen. Without pollen, there's no way to trace where the honey came from or verify its authenticity. A lawsuit in California caught Sue Bee red-handed. Testing showed their clover honey contained zero pollen, not low pollen. Zero? That's not an accident or side effect of processing. That's intentional removal to hide the honey's origin. What makes Sue Bee significant is the scale of the deception. This is one of America's largest honey brands, sold in virtually every supermarket, trusted by millions of families, and they're selling a product that doesn't meet the legal definition of honey. The ultrafiltration serves one purpose: hiding cheap imported honey from countries known for honey fraud. Chinese honey has been repeatedly caught containing illegal antibiotics, heavy metals, and high fructose corn syrup. By removing all pollen, Sue Bee makes it impossible to prove where their honey came from. At $4 per bottle, Sue Bee is cheap because they're using the cheapest possible honey from the cheapest possible sources, then processing it until there's no evidence of origin. The flavor tells you everything. Sue Bee tastes generic, bland, with none of the floral complexity that real honey delivers. That's because ultrafiltration removes the compounds that give honey its character, leaving just sweetness. Nature Nates markets itself as the honest alternative: raw, unfiltered, 100% pure, with packaging that screams authenticity and transparency. The reality? Lab testing reveals HMF levels so high, they indicate the honey has been cooked, stored improperly, or isn't what the label claims. HMF stands for hydroxymethylfurfuryl, a compound that forms when honey is heated or aged badly. Fresh raw honey has almost no HMF. Nature Nates has been tested at levels exceeding 200 milligrams per kilogram, far above what's acceptable for raw honey. High HMF indicates the honey was either heated during processing, stored at high temperatures for extended periods, or is so old it's degraded. None of these scenarios match the raw and unfiltered claims on the label. What makes Nature Nates particularly problematic is the raw designation. Raw honey shouldn't be heated above 95 degrees. The temperature inside a beehive, heating destroys enzymes, vitamins, and beneficial compounds. High HMF proves nature. Nate's honey has been exposed to heat that disqualifies it as raw. Independent food bloggers have called out Nature Nates for years, pointing to the suspiciously low price for supposedly raw honey and the questionable HMF levels. The brand continues selling with the raw label because enforcement is practically non-existent. At $8 per squeeze bottle, Nature Nates charges a premium for raw honey while delivering heated product. You're paying for marketing and packaging, not for actual raw honey. The thick consistency and smooth texture are engineered through heating and processing, not natural characteristics of raw honey. Real raw honey crystallizes, separates, and changes texture over time. Nature Nates stays smooth because it's been processed to prevent those natural behaviors. Great Value is Walmart's house brand, and their honey represents everything wrong with the industrial honey supply. The label says raw and organic, which sounds trustworthy until you see the lab reports showing HMF levels twice what's acceptable, and manos levels 3 times normal. Manos is a sugar that indicates the honey has been adulterated with corn syrup or rice syrup. High mannose levels are a smoking gun for honey fraud. Great Value's organic raw honey tested positive for manos at levels that prove sweetener adulteration. The FDA says honey mixed with other sweeteners can't legally be called honey. Great Value is selling syrup blend with a honey label, and because it's the country's largest retailer, millions of Americans are buying it thinking they're getting real honey. The organic certification on Great Value honey is particularly cynical. Organic means the bees visited organic flowers, which is nearly impossible to verify and essentially meaningless. What matters is whether the honey has been cut with corn syrup. Organic fraud is still fraud. Lab testing by Food Safety News found that Great Value honey had been ultrafiltered to remove pollen, heated enough to create excessive HMF, and adulterated with cheaper sweeteners. It fails on every measure of honey authenticity. At $3 for a large bottle, Great Value is suspiciously cheap. Real honey costs money to produce. When major retailers sell honey at prices below production costs, they're either selling imported honey from questionable sources or selling something that isn't entirely honey. Walmart's response to testing that exposed Great Value: silence, no recalls, no reformulation, no acknowledgement, just continued sales of fraudulent product to consumers who trust the Walmart name. Kroger operates under dozens of store brands, depending on region: Fred Meyer, Ralph's, King Soopers, all selling Kroger private label honey. Lab tests show this honey has been heated to extreme temperatures, destroying natural enzymes and creating toxic HMF levels. Independent testing found Kroger honey with HMF exceeding 100 milligrams per kilogram, well above the 40 milligram limit that indicates degradation or improper processing. High HMF isn't just a quality issue. Excessive levels are potentially harmful with regular consumption. The heating serves multiple purposes. It makes honey easier to bottle by keeping it liquid. It destroys any evidence of origin or adulteration, and it extends shelf life by killing everything that would cause the honey to ferment or crystallize naturally. What makes Kroger honey representative of supermarket private label honey is the complete lack of transparency. No origin information, no harvest date, no beekeeper identification, just a generic bottle of mystery honey from unknown sources. The phrase pure honey on Kroger bottles is meaningless. Pure isn't a regulated term in honey labeling. It can mean 100% honey, or it can mean honey mixed with corn syrup, as long as honey is the primary ingredient. The vagueness is intentional. The FDA's definition of honey requires it to contain pollen, but there's no enforcement. Kroger can sell ultra-filtered pollen-free product labeled as honey and face zero consequences because nobody is checking. At $4 per bottle, Kroger honey is cheap because it's made from the cheapest available sources processed in the cheapest possible way. You're buying heated, filtered, possibly adulterated mystery honey. Walgreens. Nice honey represents pharmacy brands that Americans assume are safer or more trustworthy. Buying honey from a pharmacy feels more legitimate than buying it from a gas station. The reality is exactly the opposite. Testing by Texas A&M University's Palynology Lab found that 100% of honey samples from Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid contained no pollen whatsoever, zero. That means these products don't legally qualify as honey according to FDA standards. Pharmacy chains ultrafilter and overheat honey until every enzyme, vitamin, and mineral is destroyed. What's left is pure sweetness with zero nutritional value. Food Safety News described it as fake honey that's basically just sweetener, and they weren't exaggerating. What makes pharmacy honey particularly insidious is the trust factor. People assume pharmacy products undergo more scrutiny or quality control. In reality, pharmacies source the cheapest bulk honey available, process it heavily for shelf stability, and sell it to customers who trust the pharmacy brand. The clear plastic bottles guarantee light damage. Honey is photosensitive, meaning light breaks down beneficial compounds. Serious honey producers use dark glass or opaque containers. Walgreens uses clear plastic because the honey inside doesn't justify better packaging. At $5 for generic pharmacy brand honey, you're paying for the convenience of buying honey when you pick up prescriptions. You're not getting quality. Safeway and Albertsons sell honey under their signature Select brand, and testing reveals the same problems as other store brands: zero pollen after ultrafiltration, high heat processing that destroys beneficial compounds, and suspicious sourcing that suggests imported honey laundered through domestic bottling. The absence of pollen in Signature Select honey isn't a side effect, it's the goal. By removing pollen, Safeway makes it impossible to verify the honey came from American beekeepers, as the label implies. Testing can't detect Chinese or Vietnamese origin if there's no pollen to analyze. Small Batch Goodness, a food testing organization, specifically called out Signature Select for containing zero pollen after extreme filtration. The FDA's own guidelines say honey should contain pollen because that's what makes it traceable and authentic. What makes Signature Select particularly frustrating is how Safeway and Albertsons position themselves as quality grocers, higher prices than Walmart, better store environments, premium house brands, but their honey is just as processed and questionable as discount store brands. The raw and unfiltered claim on some Signature Select honey is demonstrably false. Testing shows heavy processing, high heat exposure, and complete pollen removal. Unfiltered honey should have visible pollen and particles. This honey is crystal clear. At $5 per bottle, Signature Select charges more than great value. While delivering similar quality, you're paying for the Safeway brand association, not for better honey. Billy Bee is a Canadian brand that's made inroads into American supermarkets, particularly in border states. The friendly bear mascot and maple leaf branding suggest wholesome northern honey. Testing tells a different story about global sourcing and heavy processing. Billy Bee sources honey from multiple countries, including Argentina, Brazil, and India. The honey is blended, heated, and filtered to create consistency across massive production volumes. What you're getting is industrial honey with Canadian branding. The Canadian origin creates false security. Consumers assume Canadian food standards are stricter or that Canadian honey is purer. In reality, Billy Bee uses the same global supply chains and processing methods as American brands. The pasteurization that Billy Bee uses destroys the enzymes that make raw honey valuable, diastase and invertase. Enzymes that aid digestion and provide health benefits are temperature sensitive. Heating above 120 degrees destroys them permanently. At $6 per bottle, Billy Bee charges mid-tier prices for honey that's been processed into nutritional insignificance. The friendly packaging can't hide the industrial reality inside. Subscribe and stick around because we're about to expose how even premium stores are selling fake honey. Whole Foods, 365 Organic Mountain Forest. Honey sounds impressive. Organic certification. Evocative name. Premium store positioning. Lab tests reveal it's been heated and stripped of nutrients, turning wild forest honey into industrial processed sweetener. The organic certification guarantees the bees visited organic flowers, but says nothing about how the honey was processed after harvest. Organic honey can still be heated, ultra-filtered, and degraded just like conventional honey. Whole Foods sources their 365 honey from multiple countries, primarily Brazil and Argentina, where organic honey production is cheaper. The honey is shipped in bulk, heated for easier handling, filtered for clarity, then bottled with marketing language about pristine forests. 5 out of 7 organic honey samples in one comprehensive test still contained pollen. Whole Foods 365 likely didn't because the high heat processing destroyed everything that would prove origin or freshness. What makes Whole Foods 365 honey a betrayal is the store's positioning. Whole Foods built its reputation on higher standards, cleaner ingredients, better sourcing. Shoppers pay premium prices trusting Whole Foods does the homework, but their honey uses the same global sourcing and heavy processing as conventional brands. The mountain forest imagery is pure marketing. The honey could be from industrial Brazilian farms, not untouched mountain forests, without pollen, and with heavy processing. There's no way to verify the romantic origin story. The irony is that Whole Foods sells genuinely good local honey from small producers in their specialty section, but the 365 house brand uses the same cost-cutting and corner-cutting as conventional supermarkets. The Whole Foods name doesn't guarantee quality when profit margins matter more. At $12 per jar, Whole Foods 365 organic honey is expensive. You're paying for organic certification and Whole Foods markup, not for superior honey quality. Trader Joe's sells multiple honey products, and their cheap organic honey from Argentina performs exactly as you'd expect for imported bulk honey. But what's interesting is even their premium offerings show the problems of long-distance sourcing. The standard Trader Joe's organic honey, around $6, is imported from Argentina or Brazil, it's been heated for shipping stability, filtered for clarity, and stored for unknown periods before reaching American shelves. The organic label is the only thing distinguishing it from conventional honey. Argentina is the world's third largest honey exporter, and much of that honey is produced in industrial-scale operations that barely resemble traditional beekeeping. Organic certification is cheaper to obtain in Argentina than in the US, which is why so many American stores source from there. The problem with imported honey isn't necessarily fraud, though that's a risk, it's freshness and processing. Honey shipped halfway around the world in bulk containers requires heating to keep it liquid. That heating destroys the enzymes and compounds that make raw honey valuable. Trader Joe's raw, unfiltered honey at $8 is better, but still imported with the same freshness and processing concerns. Raw honey should ideally be consumed within a year of harvest. By the time Argentine honey reaches Trader Joe's shelves, it's already months old. What makes Trader Joe's interesting is they're honest about sourcing, listing the country of origin on labels. That transparency is rare and appreciated, even if the sourcing itself is questionable. At $6 to $8, Trader Joe's organic honey is mid-priced, but still subject to all the problems of imported bulk honey, better than sous vide, but far from ideal. Publix, the southeastern grocery chain, sells private label honey, including orange blossom and clover varieties. Florida's fake honey lawsuit specifically named Publix honey for being ultrafiltered to remove all pollen, violating Florida's honey standards. Florida law allows minimal filtration to remove unavoidable impurities like bee parts or wax fragments. It explicitly prohibits total sterilization filtration. Publix honey showed zero pollen, meaning they went far beyond legal filtration into ultrafiltration territory. Without pollen, there's no way to verify the orange blossom or clover claims. The honey could be from any source, any country, any flowers. The floral designations become meaningless marketing terms. The lawsuit alleged Publix intentionally removed pollen to hide cheap imported honey sources. Orange blossom honey from Florida commands premium prices. Generic imported honey costs pennies. By stripping pollen, Publix could sell cheap imports as premium Florida honey. What makes Publix's position particularly problematic is their reputation as a trusted regional chain. Southerners are fiercely loyal to Publix, viewing it as more trustworthy than national chains. That loyalty was exploited to sell questionable honey. At $7 for orange blossom honey, Publix charges premium prices for honey that testing proves isn't what the label claims. You're paying for Florida orange blossom while possibly getting ultrafiltered imports. Now let's talk about what real honey actually is, because most Americans have never tasted it. Local raw honey from farmers markets or roadside stands is where honey stops being an industrial product and becomes actual food. This is honey from beekeepers you can meet, from hives you can visit, harvested recently, and bottled without processing. The variability is the first sign of authenticity. Local honey tastes different jar to jar because it comes from different flowers at different times. Spring honey tastes different from fall honey. Honey from one county tastes different from honey 20 miles away. That variation is what real honey does. Industrial honey tastes identical year-round because it's blended from multiple sources and engineered for consistency. Local honey changes because it reflects what's actually blooming when bees make it. The crystallization is another sign. Real raw honey crystallizes within weeks or months of harvest because it contains natural pollen and enzymes. Industrial honey stays liquid because heating and ultrafiltration removed everything that would cause crystallization. When local honey crystallizes, you can gently warm it to reliquefy. The fact that it crystallized proves it wasn't overheated originally. Industrial honey that stays liquid forever has been processed to death. Local beekeepers don't have the equipment for ultrafiltration. They strain honey through mesh to remove wax and bee parts, but pollen passes through. That pollen is your guarantee of authenticity and traceability. At $15 per jar, local honey is expensive because beekeeping is labor-intensive and yields are small. You're paying for real honey from real bees, not for industrial processed sweetener. The best sources are farmers markets, where you can talk to beekeepers directly, ask where the hives are located, when the honey was harvested, what flowers the bees visited. Real beekeepers love talking about their work and have nothing to hide. Here's what you need to know. Most honey in American stores isn't really honey. It's been ultrafiltered to remove pollen, making it legally not honey. It's been heated to destroy beneficial compounds, making raw claims fraudulent. It's been adulterated with corn syrup, making purity claims lies. Real honey contains pollen, crystallizes naturally, and comes from known local sources. If your honey doesn't crystallize, it's been processed. If it has no harvest date, it's probably old. If it's suspiciously cheap, it's probably fraudulent. Your kitchen deserves honey that actually came from bees this year, not industrial sweetener shipped from China and laundered through American bottling plants. Hit subscribe for more food truth. Drop a comment about which honey brand you've been buying. Keep your standards high and your honey actually real.